what's up everyone, it's Emily and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my Preptober number 2 video. So if you haven't seen the first one, I would go ahead and watch that one first because this is actually going to directly correlate with what I talked about in that first one. If you've already seen that video, hi, it's me, I'm back. And today I'm going to talk about outlining a little bit more in depth than I did in the last video. In my last video, I talked about the 3-act plot structure and how in a lot of Western media especially, we use that to shape our story to get from point A to point B all the way to the end of our book. And how I am going to talk about outlining actually directly funnels in from the 3-act structure. If you haven't heard of it before, it's called the 27-chapter outline. And for me, this is, I think, is the best way for my brain to get a story onto paper in order for me to write it out later. What this does is it takes the 3-act structure that you started with and breaks it down even more into 9 points for each act and kind of funnels it into more and more bite-sized pieces so that you can draft it fully and then have a very solid foundation for your first draft. Below, I'm going to link a couple different things that you can look at for the 27 plot point structure and other outlining I am still sick, so if my brain is like not here, that's why. I'm so sorry. And other outlining resources for you to look at as well, because all of us are different, all of our brains work differently, and what works for me might not work for you, and you should just find your craft and what works for you within these tools. It might be a mixture of these things put together, it might be none of these things and something that you come up with all on your own, but I'm just going to provide you with a couple resources so that you can get started and have a nice, good outline so that you can be as successful as you can be in November. So with the 3-act structure, if you remember from my last video, we have the beginning, the middle, and the end. I just want to preface that just because it says the 27-chapter outlining method does not mean that your story is going to have 27 chapters. You can break this up more and more, especially if you have lots of subplots going on or other things that you need to pay more attention to that you want to put in its own chapter. Also, the pacing of your book is going to determine how quickly you move on from chapter to chapter. So this is just to break down the elements into bite-sized pieces, and then when you are writing your book, you can break that down even more. So every action or plot point in your book has some sort of reaction or consequence to it. That is what leads us further and further into the story. So after we have this sort of introduction to our character in the world, we have our inciting incident, which should be the thing that takes our main character and thrusts them into the action. Sorry, if my camera is shaking, it's because Suki is pushing herself against the table that my camera is on. So after our inciting incident, there should be an immediate reaction to what happened, whether it's confusion, anger, frustration, sadness. You know, if your inciting incident is someone dying in front of your main character, your protagonist, like, what is that initial reaction to it? That should affect your character in some way. After that immediate reaction should be the long-term reaction. How does that affect them afterwards? This is to give us an idea of how this inciting incident is going to affect our protagonist in the long term. To go back to my Hunger Games example from the first video, after Katniss volunteers herself as tribute as District 12, her immediate reaction to Prim having her name called is to volunteer as tribute. So that's her immediate reaction. And then the long-term reaction is her understanding that she is now a tribute and what that truly means for her and her future. Sometimes this can be a refuse to a call of action, depending on the story, as in a hero just completely denying what has happened to them and to refuse to help the people that are asking for their help, you know, whatever it is. And sometimes it is the character jumping right into it. The next thing after that is action. And so this is the character taking action towards the story and how they are going to deal with the inciting incident. This usually involves the hero making some sort of decision about moving forward. An example of this could be that after Katniss and Primrose meet up after the reaping, very briefly before Katniss is about to be sent away, she promises Primrose that she is going to do everything she can to win the games. So this is her deciding, in that moment, I'm going to take action to do my best to win and to survive. After that, we have a consequence. So that means that maybe she has to cut ties with Peeta and the other tributes, or she has to form a relationship with Haymitch, who she despises in the beginning. You know, all of these things have consequences. So we go from her promising Prim that she's going to win to what that now means for her in this world to achieve that promise or that decision that she makes. The next is the pressure, which is where how their action is now starting to weigh down on the character, because everything in your book more than likely is going to be an uphill climb for your protagonist. Things should not necessarily come easy to them, because we as readers love to see characters struggle and overcome obstacles. So if things are made too easy for them, we don't have anything to root for. And if they are too hard and they can't overcome it, then where is the story going to go? But we want to see them struggle. So we need it to be something that they can overcome in some way, shape, or form, but it also needs to be hard for them to do it. Example of this could be during the training in the Hunger Games, Katniss is seeing the other tributes and seeing how, she could die. This might kill her. She maybe doesn't think she has much of a chance. Or she's seeing how hard it would be to kill these other people because she sees them as people. This is normally just some sort of pressure that maybe the character didn't realize when they decided to make this decision or take action in this way. The next part is the pinch, which is kind of like a mini plot twist. It should be that the character made this decision and it didn't turn out the way that they maybe intended it to the first time. Now our hero is second guessing themselves and wondering if what they did was right. I think in my Hunger Games analogy, this would be when Peeta professes that he is in love with Katniss, and now she's like, oh my God. So that is something that we as the audience didn't know, we as Katniss didn't know. This is new information. It is a kind of a plot twist that rushes us forward and makes her question everything. And then because of that, we're now pushed, and the push is into Act 2. So in my Hunger Games analogy, this would be them being pushed into the arena. We are now in a new setting, new world, this new thing that's been created. And it doesn't need to be actually a new setting, but it needs to be a new reality for this character. Act 2 is where the majority of the meat of the story is. It's where the fun and games are. It's where we get most of our relationship and character and world building happening. And so this is the majority of the book. And it's also, in my opinion, the hardest to write, because this is kind of where if you have any plot holes or you're missing anything in your outline or character work, where things kind of start to fall through, because you will be missing elements to keep the story ramping up. And so I think that for me, this is the most important thing to outline, because it's what's going to keep you moving forward through your story. Okay, so we've moved into Act 2, and now we have this new world that we are in, so your character needs to experience that, and then we move right into fun and games. And this is like what I was talking about. This is like the really fun part where all the relationship building happens. If you're going to include a romance, this is normally the place that you're going to either introduce that character or really have that develop. Then we have old contrast, and this is when your protagonist should reflect on what their life was like before. And it's also a reminder to the reader and your character how much they've changed in this time that they've dealt with this inciting incident and everything that's happened since. Next is going to be build up, and this is when a struggle comes up for your character, either external or internal, that motivates your character to take the story into their own hands. We should kind of be able to tell that we're coming up on a turning point in the story, because the next thing is the midpoint, which is the turning point of the story. This should complicate their plans beyond belief, and it should really affect everything the character has done up until now and how they're going to continue moving forward. The reversal is right after this, which is basically just where everything up until now has changed completely. And the consequence, which comes directly after that, is the consequence or the hero reflecting on the consequences of everything that has happened up until now. So with the reversal of the story, everything should change. There should be new roadblocks in place, whether it's technology that hasn't been invented yet or knowledge that our character has yet to obtain or understand. And these should create new conflicts or changes in the world. And then the consequence of that is now the character trying to figure out what to do now, because there are new things in the way, whether it's people don't believe them when they say what happened, or the character no longer has a confidant that they thought that they did because that person has betrayed them. And then the trials comes right after that, which is where the character decides to take things into their own hands and to make a decision. And to make a decision of how they're going to work around the roadblocks that are now standing in the way. And then the dedication is the hero being determined and dedicated to figuring this out or overcoming this obstacle in some way. We're still ramping up towards our major climax, by the way. So with my Hunger Games example of this little section here, because I know that this can be really confusing, it was confusing to me at first as well. So in my Hunger Games example, the midpoint was when Rue was killed, right? So that was the turning point for Katniss about the games and how she like kind of was revitalized to win in a lot of ways, but also it changed her understanding of the world, and that even this little girl was not safe from the terrors of the world of Panem and the games that they were all involved in. And that changes Katniss internally, and she has been struggling with that because Rue reminds her of Prim, and there's like this internal external struggle going on within her. And after she has this sort of funeral for Rue, she makes the decision to, I believe this is when she goes to find Peeta, and that is like her ramping up into like what is going to be the end of the Hunger Games. So because of this midpoint, this turning point that happened, her goal within her has been revitalized, and she has this new strength to overcome these obstacles that have been laid out for her. And then we move into Act 3, and this is when things get really exciting. First, we have the calm before the storm, and this is where, like, as the reader, you should kind of feel the ground like bubbling underneath you. Like, this is when things are really starting to get exciting. Sometimes this can be where the romance is built upon a little bit more character development has gone on, and they should maybe start to doubt themselves of like whether this is going to work, whether they can continue. Are they strong enough to continue? Are they powerful enough? Do they have the capability to move forward? This is kind of another reflective moment. And then we have another pinch, and this is a even bigger plot twist than the first time, and everything is much worse than we ever could have thought it was, which leads us right into the darkest point, which is where the character should just be like, nothing is going to be okay. Everything is lost. Your character has been betrayed. The person they loved is actually the one who planned to kill them. You know, this is where things should just be going really, really poorly for your character. And then somehow the character finds the strength to move on. So whether it's internally, they rekindle that fire again because they're reminded of why they're doing this in the first place. They have a friend who's there for them. They have people that are relying on them. You know, whatever it is, they find that thing that pushes them forward. Even though everything is against them, they're gonna move forward anyway. Next, we have another action point, which again, after they have like rekindled this fire, now we need to do something about it. So we have our cause and effect. So they've rekindled it, and now what are they gonna do about it? And then the convergence point is next as well, where everything is gonna start to come together. Your plot points, your sub points, your character building, everything is kind of weaving itself into these to this one major thing, so that everything is fitting together and your story feels very, very much like everything was related in the first place. So if there was a relationship that was lost, this needs to be kind of rebuilt upon. If someone has died, maybe this is when they start to get over that grief that's been with them throughout the story, or it takes on a new form. All of these things that are kind of like weaving in together with the main plot. And we should really feel that the big thing is coming, the battle, because that is what's next. And the battle is, you know, I don't want to say that it's between good and evil, because that sounds very like it only relates to fantasy. And I think this works really well for fantasy, but I think it works everywhere, right? You know, the battle doesn't need to be like swords and shields. It can be a battle for independence. It could be a battle for love. It could be a battle for anything. You know, it's just two people who are just fighting full force against each other. These two opposing heads are at each other's throats, and like it is now or never. Like someone is going to fail and someone is going to die. And then our climax happens, which is where the character either triumphs or fails. If they fail, do they get anything from it? If they triumph, do they lose anything? You know, and then we need to kind of see in our resolution how all of that ties up. And then during that resolution, we should also really see how the character has changed and developed through the story. You know, have they gotten stronger? Have they gotten weaker? Are they more scared of things that they weren't scared of before? What have they learned? And so that should all kind of just tie up really nicely at the end. So what I like to do when I'm outlining for a story is I like to write all of these little points down. I have a link below with all of them just kind of like on a numbered list from an article that I found. I like to type all of those out or copy paste them into a document. I use Google Drive because that's just what I have available to me, but if you use Word or something else, you can do that. And then I like to do like 1 or 2 sentences of what is going to happen to my character during each of those plot points. And then what I like to do is expand on it. So I kind of do a mixture of the 27 chapters and like the snowflake method, because in my outlines, I need to be really specific because I don't want to forget anything that I planned. I have a habit of having all these ideas and then they can never come to fruition because I forget them halfway through. And I really, for NaNoWriMo specifically, I really want to know where I'm going with each chapter so that I have it all kind of planned out ahead of time and I can just go, because 50,000 words in a month is a lot. The snowflake method is basically taking a very, very tiny idea, like 1 or 2 sentence summary of your story, and just expanding and expanding and expanding in every direction, like a snowflake. I take these ideas and then I kind of break them down, and I break them down even more, and then I write basically as detailed as I can be for myself what I want each scene to look like, what I think each character is feeling, what each character's motivation is. And that's kind of how I outline my pieces. My outline right now is almost done, like maybe 2/3 of the way done, maybe a little bit more, 3/4. And I'm at about 20 pages in my document. And it's seeming like right now I'm probably going to be at about 30 pages and like 35 chapters, depending on how quickly things wrap up in my story. I'm not really sure yet. My outline is kind of like a draft of my first draft for me. And that's what works for me as a writer. That might not work for everyone. Some people really want a lot of freedom when they write. But the thing is, as much as I love that, and when I am writing, I try to be free with my thoughts, and if things come up, I will change them, like no problem. I'm not strict with myself that way, but in order for me to write consistently, I need to know where I'm going at all times. So that works for me. I just wanted to share this method with everyone. If you are struggling with your outline, that first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, that there are tools out there to help you and help you organize your thoughts. Some people are able to just kind of do a, timeline of their story and just have little things here and there showing, and then this happens and then this happens and then we end up here. And that works for them, and I think that's amazing. I cannot work that way. I need a little bit more structure in my writing in order to be successful. Okay, I think that was it. I know that was a lot of information. I hope it all made sense. I, again, am going to link some articles and other tools down below for you all to look at. Please let me know down below if you have any questions or you want to build on anything that I have already spoken about. I love having conversations about these, and I think that, we can all just help each other as needed, because, all of our minds work better than people individually. I would love to hear how you outline, if you outline in a different way. If you enjoyed this video, if you would please like and subscribe to my channel, it would mean a lot to me and it really helps me out. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.